All right, you guys, I hope you had a good 4th of July. I'm going to answer the questions that you guys submitted this past weekend. So, we're going to start with Chance.
I had to re-record this because I screwed up the first time and did not have my microphone on, which is fun. But this is what I've been working on this week. I don't really have any other questions, so I figured I might as well show it. It's basically this little gray box level. Here's the character I showed last week. Basically, you could take this through down here. Message is doing something. I'll have to check that out later. Yeah, you could run through this little level here. There's some open areas, stuff like that. And then get up here. I figure there might be a little puzzle with this box that I'm about to jump to, but where you could shoot it down, but that's not what I'm too concerned about yet. To get across this, you have to sprint jump, which you do by holding the shift key. You can get down here and into this elevator where it will load the next level. So that's what I've been working on. It's not really animation related. It's been fairly slow lately with a lot of the classwork. But yeah, I figured I might as well show what I've been working on.
Yeah, it looks cool, Chance. Maybe what you could do next time is tell me how you can incorporate like some animation into those, like into your environment or onto your character and stuff like that. I think that would help to pertain to the class animation. I mean, you're still in the field of digital art showing us that, but um, I mean, it doesn't necessarily stick along the lines of what we're doing. I'm curious though if you design the level, it looks pretty cool. I think that seeing your progression is good, but I would start maybe incorporating those aspects of animation into your weekly questions and maybe what you could do or what you plan to do with those types of things. So, but it looks cool. All right, here's Marion.
Hello, my name is Marion Fish. I'm doing the participation grade for July 2nd. I know it's a little early. Um,
No worries,
as
that's
for
fine.
questions, I can't really think of many. Um,
It's
in
okay.
general, all I have to say really is that I feel bad for the Eve one because I did finish. Like I didn't actually get to finish it because I ran out of time basically. I threw in what I had because I didn't want it to get I didn't want to lose the chance of throwing in at least something in there. And I also noticed that the video goes on for 15 seconds. I'm sorry about that. I ended up cutting it down to I think 3 or 4 seconds for the Slack one for the small one because I noticed it and I cut it down and reposted it on there.
That's okay. I don't want to worry too much. I'm not gonna knock. I've had other students accidentally leave like blank frames and stuff after in their render after the video's done, so it'll be like 10 seconds of just nothing. That's okay. I'm not gonna knock points off for that. Just I'm happy that you noticed it, and then you'll fix that for whenever we do the revision assignment,
Um,
which actually will be probably soon, either this week or next week.
I guess my only real question I have is there any way to like make up these participation grades if we miss them? I ask because oftentimes like I my main issue is that I'll forget that it's due on Sundays and I will completely forget to do them. So that's why I've missed these two. Um, yeah, and that's why I'm doing it early now while I'm still remembering it. So that's my only questions really. Yeah. Thank
There's
you.
not really a way to make up the participation grades because it's how I keep attendance. So, but if you happen to, like you said, you submitted this one early, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead and just submit your questions early or anything pertaining to animation, like discussions or questions along those lines. Submit it early and I'll count it, right? I'm not too picky with the participation questions, just as long as you really get something in so that I can be like, okay, you're working on it. I can see you're working on that stuff. Like I said, you guys will get a chance to once I get the grades in. I know I still have to grade the hierarchies in the Eve. So the robot arm I have to grade, and same with the Eve. But I still have to grade. I've just been something happened and I've been behind. So I apologize for that, but I'll get on that, and then once I do, you guys can make revisions to those. I would start doing revisions to your other past assignments right now, because that revision, the actual revision assignment will be coming up very quickly. So just start to get those participation grades in as soon as you can, and also make sure you stay on top of your assignments. But good job. All right, Melanie.
Professor Amanda, my question of the week is how to get the color of the inside of the butterfly stay intact and not also cover the outside. I am having trouble trying to get the color like just stick on to the inside of the butterfly. For some reason, each time I try to add like a different color, it just doesn't stay stuck. And I've grouped them to a group, but even then, like, it's not, I just don't understand why it's not going into one solid color. So I was hoping you can help me with that, please. Thank you.
I'm assuming that you need to turn those black. So it depends on how you built that, Melanie, because it looks like it's all on one singular layer. Let me see here. It depends on which tutorial you followed. Actually, I'm going to shoot you a side message so we can get that figured out separately, because I think that you might have to just pull those separate sections onto a different layer instead of Illustrator to get it to work. Plus, I noticed where you were still clicking on the orange, and it wasn't actually selecting the black. Let me see here. Let me just open Illustrator very quickly. Or not quickly, however long it freaking takes. Let me create a new document here. We're just gonna... Gosh, everything's so slow right now. Okay, so let's say we have this box that represents a butterfly wing, and I wanted to add onto the same layer, right? Because we want the wing to be all together. So let me open my layers panel right here so you can see. Let's say I wanted to add the details in, right? I'm gonna I'll grab a brush tool. Actually, no, I will grab the pen tool. And I'm gonna swap that out. Undo that. Select that. Grab my pen tool. Swap the color. Well, let's just say we draw the shape here, and it's going to have the same fill and stroke properties as the rest of the layer. Now that one should be this layer right here. I'm going to select it, and then I am just going to pick the color essentially. So you want to make sure that you're selecting this little button on the side here, because that's going to select this specific shape and not the entire layer. So if I just click on, let me unselect this. If I just click on this, the actual layer, and it's highlighted, it's not going to change the color of my object if I try and change it. It's going to, even if I have something selected and I'm like, I want it gray, it's not going to work. I have to actually select that specific object. So I will go over here, select that little button, which shows that it's selecting that object. Then I will go in and change the color that way, and it will work for me. So let me know if this works. If it doesn't, We'll figure that out for you. I mean, not fully close Illustrator, just in case you guys have more questions about it. All right, next question is David.
Hello, everyone. I just had a question about scaling in After Effects. It seems like after I changed all of my anchor points and I scaled up my butterfly, it would be kind of all over the place. And I know it's because of the anchor points. I was just wondering, I found a workaround for that, but I'm sure there's probably an easier way to get around that. And I was just wondering if anybody knew of an easier way.
Yeah, first of all, I need to point out your taco shirt and how cool it is. I feel like I need a taco shirt. Yeah, so what you would get around this by using what we call a null, and it's essentially a blank layer that you can assign things to, right? So I like to think of it as a kind of a control. So let's say I have several squares on separate layers. Let me make sure that those aren't. Let me do something here. Let me make a new composition. Let's say I have my butterfly consists of several objects, like you would have the wings, the antenna, the body. They all have their anchor points set. They're all parented to each other. Let's parent this one to here, this one to here, this one to here. And then this one is the main one. It's going to control everything if I move it. But let's say I want to scale, and for some reason they're all going out of control, right? Because they're kind of scaling from the main parent there. What you could do, I apologize. Sorry there, guys. What you can do is you right click down here on your timeline and you go to new and you're going to select null object. And what that does is it creates that blank control there. And you're going to select all of your layers. And you're actually going to parent them temporarily to that null. And so what happens then is if I scale that null, everything will scale from that layer and it won't cause, like, sometimes what'll happen is if you scale your separate layers, they'll overlap each other and it doesn't look like they're sticking together. But if you use this null, it's almost like it fuses all of those layers together temporarily, and then you can use that null to scale things up or to move things around, and then you can just delete it and it'll keep the properties that the null gave it, but the null won't be there, right? So you can either ignore it and or you can delete it, and it's like a temporary workaround for issues like that, especially if you already have animations to those layers. So just a quick tip for you guys to help you out with those kind of issues later on. Good question, David. All right. Let me go to Isla.
Hi, so for making animations in Cinema 4D, I was wondering if it would be better to input the coordinates manually, like kind of like how we did in the past, or would it be better to use the cappuccino where you do this real time and just move it around?
You can do both, really. I mean, the cappuccino is for more complex motions, I think, that would be harder to achieve by manually changing the coordinates, right? But really, I mean, whatever. Cappuccino is like a rough start to it, so that's why I say it's better for more complex motions. And then if you're just having a simple, like if the object's just rotating and changing position and stuff, you can do that manually, right? It's not that big of a deal. But if you have something like the Eve bot, which is a more complex thing where she flies in, she stops for a second, she hovers, so she's moving all around, and then the timing's different, and then she flies off, then that is a cappuccino moment, right? But if you're just having like the bouncing ball, then I would just use the coordinates. I mean, you can also use the cappuccino like we were talking about in the lesson to get a visual of how your frames should look and how your curves should look. So you can use it as like a reference point too. So many different ways to do things, the same thing sometimes inside of these programs. All right, Lazaro.
Hello. This probably is like a very dumb question to ask, but I'm genuinely curious. Um, so with the parenting and child grouping, where parents can have multiple groups of childs, is it possible for a child to have to be like connected to multiple parents? Because
No.
like in my mind it makes sense why it wouldn't, but I'm just wondering if that's a possibility, and if not, is there a way to make it to where it can be a possibility?
No, there's no, once it's like linked to, I mean, you could always change who the parent is, but no, it's almost like, they only get one parent in the process. So if it's, you can change it by doing like the switch technique, kind of like we did, like exactly like we did with the robot arm picking up the ball, and you have three separate instances of the ball, and each one of those instances has a separate parent, right? You can do it that way. Um, but there is unfortunately no way to have like two parents set at once. And there's not a way that I'm aware of it unless there's some kind of plugin or script, which is essentially like an extension to your program that allows that to happen, but I haven't heard anything like that. So, uh, interesting question though. Good question because I know it can be complex. So, all right, we have Paige.
Right. Hello. For this week, I have more questions about just like um, the industry, I guess. Like, so we're doing Eve from Wally, but I was just wondering if this is like typical, like if they're working on a movie, are they all like exporting everything off to PNGs and then compiling it in another program, or is it looking like something else? Like how does that work? And then
Let me answer that question first. So there's in the professional like studio industry, they're going to use multiple projects or multiple different workflows where they're going from there's different passes that they have. So they're going to have like the animation basics laid down. They're not going to render it as a PNG sequence. We just do that because that's the easiest for us. They're going to then send those files off for someone so that they can do texturing, lighting, materials, all that kind of stuff like environment, throwing it in the environment. So it's a much heavier process, which we unfortunately don't do here because we don't have the capabilities to do that at the school. I mean, it's just it would be something that you would kind of do when you get on the job because I don't even know of a school that takes you through the same process. Maybe Cal Arts or something like that might do something like this, but in general, you just know that there's different pass-throughs. So someone specifically does animation, then they hand those files or those renders over to someone who does the materials on it, and and then they of course have what we call a render farm, which is multiple computers. I apologize, this is my other job. There's multiple computers that are rendering these files at one time, and so they get a lot more of this done a lot quicker, and they're massively, I mean, these are movie studios doing this, so they've got the budget and stuff to get them rendered out and done specifically. So I'm sure their render process is a little bit more complex than what we do.
I was just wondering for my Monarch
I apologize about my
butterfly
nose.
because I noticed this with the other project too. But if it was, I just noticed this happen in the other Illustrator file thing. Like, are we able to just copy and paste like this wing onto the other side and put it in its own layer, as opposed to like waiting till After Effects to then do that process?
Yeah, you can. I mean, you could do that. You can go into here, and let's say I wanted to duplicate. This was my wing, right? So I could Control C, Shift, Control V, and then I'll paste it in the same place, and then I'll just hold Shift and move it over. And there's actually a button over here in your Properties panel that you have to be selected on the object. Right here is a mirroring option. It's relatively new to Illustrator. The last couple years they just added it. And you'll click that and it'll reflect it horizontally, right? So you could do it that way as well if you want to, instead of waiting to do that inside of After Effects.
Just as a way to like skip it since it's already there. Or if that's like something that affects anything, it just seemed like I could just put it on another layer.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. Exactly what I was saying. You'll just copy and paste. See, but though when I copied and pasted it, it didn't add it to a different layer, added it to the same layer. So what I would actually do is I would delete this. I would say this is my wing, right? I Control C, just Control V, paste it, add another layer here, and drag it up. Or what you could do is you could Control C, select the new layer you made, Control V, line them up that way, and then go into your property panel here and reflect it horizontally. So you could do it that way as well. Either way works. And then import that into After Effects. So that's absolutely fine to do that way. All right, so we have one more question, and it is Ryan.
Hi, so I was wondering, so I had a question about the differences between Photoshop and Illustrator. So I know like with the robot arm and then also the butterfly project, we could use either program to make them. I'm not familiar with either program, so I've been doing Illustrator because that's what the videos show, and I talked with Bella a little bit about it, and she agreed. But I did have a question about Photoshop, I guess, and I was just wondering about what the differences were. So is it that in Photoshop you would upload the actual picture and edit that itself to make the butterfly wing and the body?
No, you would actually create.
Or is it also similar to Illustrator where you would use some sort of tool to draw or outline and then develop the wing?
Yeah, so you're on the right thought process. So Photoshop is generally what we know about it is a photo manipulation program, but it's also utilized for art as well. There are people who create beautiful artworks inside of Photoshop, but the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator is that one is raster and one is vector. And so what is the difference between that? Vector is a mathematical formula that creates a shape or an object or whatever you create inside of Illustrator, that no matter what size it is, it will always be crisp and sharp because it is based off of mathematics. And so it's just like increasing that, right? And so inside of Photoshop, let's say we'll do art and illustration. Sure, fine. We'll do poster size. After all those fireworks, you guys, my nose is all crazy. You could come in here and you can create things on separate layers, right? I could go and create a new layer and do the same thing and draw it. But these are pixels, right? So this is raster-based program. What does that mean? It means that no matter, like if there is a finite amount of times that you can actually zoom in on something like this before it starts to get pixelated, like you're seeing here. It's not, let me move this a little bit over. It's not a crisp, clear line, and it's not very sharp here. It starts to look fuzzy because it is becoming pixelated. Like I can't scale this up a ton and make it look sharp and crisp like I could do inside of Illustrator. But the nice thing about this, right, a lot of people will work uh, tandemly within Illustrator and Photoshop. What they'll do is they'll get their main shapes and basically the bulk of their illustration down inside of Illustrator, and then they bring that image into Photoshop, and then they add fine details where you can get different brushes and stuff that add like different effects, and it looks more realistic, and you can do more blending inside of Photoshop that looks a little bit nicer. So that's kind of what the difference is. And so that's why you have to make sure that if you're making it inside of Photoshop, that you make everything at the size of or larger than what your composition is going to be inside of After Effects. But that's a very good question.
I was just kind of curious. I know my dad uses Photoshop, and I don't. I've tried to watch him. He makes T-shirts, he screen prints,
Oh, cool.
and I've tried to watch him, but I don't. I don't grasp it. I know that he does work from images and things like that, so I'm not, fully understanding the difference between the two, or if they are very similar and that's why you could use them, or if Photoshop would maybe give you more of a realistic wing because you would be
Yes,
working from the
yes,
picture
correct.
directly.
And you don't have to work from a picture directly. It's just the amount of detail that you can get with like brushes and different effects inside of Photoshop, which allows you to make it a little bit more realistic. Also with the blending techniques, it works a little bit differently. Um, but like I said, you have to do a little more pre-planning if you're using Photoshop versus Illustrator, where you can accidentally make it small in Illustrator, and that's okay because you can bring it into After Effects and scale it up and make it different. It's not going to be that big of an issue because it is a vector shape or vector file, which allows you to make it any size, right? Because it's changing with mathematics and not based on pixels. So that's really the major difference between the two programs. A lot of people like to use Procreate, and understandably so because it's very uh, fluid to use with an iPad. And with the iPad, you can use like the Apple Pencil, which obviously makes drawing a lot easier. Um, if you guys do want to utilize, we have drawing tablets at the school that you can utilize as well. It's a little easier to use Adobe Illustrator with a mouse and your keyboard versus Photoshop, which is better used with a drawing pad, right? And so, that's that option. As far as Procreate goes, going back to that software, that is also a raster based software, so it's more along the lines of Photoshop than it is Illustrator. So when you use those raster programs, you just need to pre-plan, hey, what is my video going to be? I need to make my assets maybe bigger than that so that if I need to scale this object for some reason inside of Photoshop, that I can do that without losing definition. So I hope that kind of cleared that question up for you. But good questions this week, you guys. I hope you had a good holiday weekend. Uh, we're close to the finish line. We only have a month left in class. And so it's going to get real tight here with some bigger projects. But you guys are doing really well and you're pushing forward. And I really like the work that I'm seeing. So let me know if you have any more questions, but I will talk to you guys later.